Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a seriously fascinating concept from a wildly popular video by Dr. David Yonggi Cho. We're going to take a completely impartial look at how he frames something you probably have sitting in your pantry right now. Yep, a common everyday kitchen staple, but he presents it as a literal supernatural tool for generating wealth. We're going to break down the exact claims and concepts he's putting out there to really understand his unique take on unlocking prosperity.
The source material actually anchors itself right away in a very heavy, real emotional place. Dr. Cho starts by acknowledging that quiet, totally desperate moment. You know, that 2 a.m. whisper of a person who has prayed, worked their absolute hardest, maybe fasted or sown seeds, and yet they are still facing crushing debt. He really hits on that profound frustration of someone looking at their stalled life and asking, God, why not me?
Which leads us right into part 1, the secret in plain sight.
So the video makes a huge, bold claim right out of the gate. It argues that the solution to all this agonizing financial stagnation isn't going to be found in some complicated 10-step financial program or an economics textbook. Instead, the answer is salt. The instrument of miracles is salt. And what's really interesting here is how the speaker emphasizes that this is not about cooking, and it's definitely not just folklore or superstition. Rather, the video frames salt as an ancient, unbreakable covenant secret that's literally been hiding in plain sight since the very beginning of creation.
Let's look at part 2, ancient currency and covenant.
To really see how this builds historically, the video takes a step back in time. It explains that long before we had stock markets or banking systems or even paper money, salt was literal, life-sustaining wealth. It was a tangible commodity that entire empires were built upon. Take the word salary, for instance. It actually comes from the Latin word salarium, which translates directly to a salt payment. The source points out that Roman soldiers literally received their wages in salt. So, to the ancient world, having salt meant having preservation, health, and blessing all wrapped up into one incredibly valuable substance.
Then the source layers this historical context with a major theological premise. Pointing right to Leviticus 2:13, every offering brought before his throne must carry salt. Dr. Cho explains that God used salt to seal an unbreakable covenant because of its totally unique properties. Think about it. Unlike fruit that decays, wood that rots, or metal that corrodes, pure salt, it never rots, it never loses its power over time. According to the video, that makes it the absolute perfect physical symbol for a permanent divine promise.
The video then pushes this concept even further into the New Testament, reporting on Jesus' words in Matthew 5:13, "Ye are the salt of the earth." According to the source, this highlights that salt doesn't just sit there doing nothing, it represents active transformation. It preserves what is dying and purifies what corruption has actually invaded. So by acting as salt, the claim is that you elevate the ordinary right into the extraordinary. From there, the source abruptly shifts focus from ancient history right into your modern living room in part 3. Your home's spiritual broadcast.
The video asks us to view the home as way more than just a physical structure of walls, windows, and doors. Instead, imagine it as a living, breathing spiritual environment that actually absorbs the energy inside it. So what exactly gets absorbed? Well, according to the source, it's things like unresolved arguments, spoken fears at the dinner table, constant worrying about money, and conversations just soaked in anxiety. The video claims that all these negative interactions leave an invisible, lingering imprint. Essentially, they turn your home into a massive broadcast tower, transmitting a constant unseen signal of lack and defeat straight into your life.
This leads to a super interesting distinction presented in the video. It contrasts a house that simply looks clean with a house that actually feels clean. It's the difference between, good interior design and what the speaker calls your spiritual frequency. The source reports that if your home's atmosphere is heavy with stagnant energy, your spirit actually wrestles with it all night in your bedroom. The result? You wake up totally exhausted because you basically spent the entire night marinating in a frequency of lack.
This brings us to part 4, the root of poverty.
Here is where the source makes a massive paradigm shift regarding the actual underlying cause of financial struggle. It asks the viewer to completely rethink why they might be stuck financially. The core argument is stated super plainly. Poverty is not a mathematical problem, it is a spiritual condition. The video asserts that trying to treat poverty with budgets alone, or better jobs, or financial advisors will ultimately fail. Why? Because the sick root of the financial tree is never actually spiritually healed. If the soil of your life is contaminated, the harvest will always be zero, no matter what seeds you try to plant.
To back this up, the source points to Proverbs 23:7, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." The speaker argues that your inner world acts exactly like a movie projector. You are constantly casting your inner beliefs, your fears, and your accepted limitations right out onto the screen of your external reality. The video claims that until you change that inner spiritual root, those exact same patterns of poverty are just going to follow you around from city to city and from job to job.
Which brings us right to the proposed solution in Part 5, the power of simplicity.
The speaker connects the physical use of salt in the home to a much broader ancient biblical pattern of how miracles actually unfold. Just consider these wild examples. Moses stretched a simple wooden staff over the sea. Naaman dipped in a muddy river. The widow used her very last drop of oil, and the prophet Elisha threw salt into poisoned water. The video rapid fires through all these stories to show that spectacular, supernatural miracles almost always require breathtakingly simple, even seemingly ordinary instruments.
And the fascinating takeaway here is that the simplicity of the act is the very point. The video clarifies a really critical nuance. It isn't claiming that the salt itself is magical. Not at all. Rather, using the salt represents a tangible act of faith-filled, covenant-backed obedience. It's really about taking a physical action that aligns with an internal belief to finally break that paralysis of just sitting around waiting for some complex, sophisticated solution to save the day.
Now, let's look at the ultimate conclusion the source drives toward in Part 6, becoming a blessing magnet.
This section explores how true abundance is supposedly generated once that internal and external alignment actually takes place. And it brilliantly illustrates the contrast between two totally different states of living. On one side, you have chasing blessing. This is that exhausting effort, the constant hustling, that horrible feeling like you're always one step behind no matter how hard you pray or work. But on the other side, that's attracting blessing, an effortless pull, resting in your aligned nature. The video argues the blessing was simply never designed to be chased. It was designed to be attracted. Much like a magnet effortlessly draws metal toward itself, just by existing in its true nature.
So the big question, how does one become this magnet? The source summarizes some very specific steps that it claims will make a person's life irresistibly magnetic to abundance. First, your thoughts must agree with divine truth. Next, your words must continually confirm the positive over your life. And finally, your home must reflect an atmosphere of peace and expectation. When all these align, perhaps initiated by that simple, faith-filled act with salt we talked about, the video claims the blessings will literally chase you down.
Which leaves us with a final, incredibly thought-provoking question from our explainer today. What spiritual frequency is your home broadcasting right now? Based on the concepts we've explored from the source material, are you transmitting a signal of lack and exhaustion? Or are you creating an aligned magnetic environment for abundance? It's a completely fascinating perspective to reflect on as you look around and consider the invisible atmosphere you're cultivating in your own living space.